Christmas Eve pressed down on the small roadside diner, like a hell breath, the kind that makes your chest ache before you even realize you're waiting for relief. Outside, snow drifted past the wide front windows in soft, apologetic flakes, clinging briefly to the glass before sliding away. Inside, weak holiday lights were strung along the counter in booths, blinking unevenly, casting a tired but hopeful glow over cracked vinyl seats and worn wooden tables. The air smelled of burnt coffee, fried potatoes, and something faintly sweet, cinnamon, maybe, that reminded people of better years and easier winters. Maria sat frozen in one of the corner booths, her back straight, her shoulders tense, her hands folded together so tightly her fingers ached. Fear and love tangled painfully in her chest, twisting together until she couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Across from her sat her twin daughters, Lily and Rose, 6 years old, their identical blonde hair tucked neatly behind their ears because Maria had brushed it that morning and told them they looked beautiful. Their blue eyes were wide and observant, fixed not on the colorful pictures of burgers and milkshakes on the menu, but on their mother's face. In the pocket of Maria's worn winter coat, folded and unfolded so many times it was soft as cloth, was a single $20 bill. That was all she had. Rent was late again. The power company had already sent 2 notices, the second one stamped in red. Christmas gifts were non-existent, and the tree in their small apartment was a borrowed plastic one with lights that only half worked. But she had promised her girls one warm meal on Christmas Eve. Somewhere bright, somewhere that didn't smell like worry, somewhere they could sit for a little while and pretend life wasn't as heavy as it had become. Maria forced a smile, even though it felt brittle, like it might crack if she tried too hard. Lily leaned closer, lowering her voice as if the diner were a church. "Mommy," she whispered, "I'm okay with just fries." Rose nodded quickly, eager to agree. "Me too. I'm not even that hungry." Those words cut deeper than hunger ever could. Maria's throat tightened, and she had to look down at the menu, so the girls wouldn't see the sting in her eyes. No child should ever have to say things like that. No child should count bites instead of dreams. She glanced around the diner, taking in the scene like an outsider. Families laughed softly over plates piled high with food. Couples leaned close, sharing stories and fries. Somewhere near the counter, an older man chuckled as a waitress refilled his coffee. The clink of silverware against ceramic plates filled the air, steady and comforting. Then the door opened. The bell above it rang sharp and sudden, slicing through the noise. Cold air rushed in, carrying with it the smell of snow and leather. Heavy boots hit the tile floor in unison. A group of men walked in broad-shouldered, their black leather vests dusted with snow, large patches stitched boldly across their backs. Hell's Angels. The conversations dipped. A few heads turned. Someone near the counter went quiet mid-sentence. Maria felt her chest tighten, so suddenly it stole her breath. Her instinct screamed at her to pull her girls closer, to make herself smaller, to disappear into the booth. She drew the menu closer to her face, pretending to read, even though she already knew every price by heart. The girls noticed the men, too. Rose's small hand slid into Maria's sleeve, clutching the fabric with quiet urgency. Lily leaned closer, her shoulder touching her mother's arm. Maria swallowed hard and forced herself to breathe slowly. "Don't judge," she told herself. "Don't assume." But fear is stubborn, especially when life has already beaten you down more times than you can count. The waitress approached their table, her smile practiced but tired, and asked if they were ready to order. Maria scanned the menu one last time, doing the math she'd already done a dozen times in her head. She ordered carefully, painfully, 1 plate of pancakes to share. Extra water. No drinks. The waitress nodded and began to turn away when Lily spoke up. Her voice was small but brave, trembling just a little. Can we please have 1 hot chocolate to share? It's Christmas." Maria closed her eyes for half a second. She could see the numbers clearly in her mind. She could feel the weight of that single bill in her pocket. Then she nodded. 1 hot chocolate," she said softly. As the waitress walked away, Maria felt a familiar burn of tears rise, but she blinked them back. She would not cry here. Not tonight. Not in front of her girls. Behind her, The Hells Angels settled into a long table near the back. Their voices were low and rough, their laughter coarse, but not cruel. One of them, a tall man with graying hair and a thick beard, sat slightly apart from the rest. He didn't laugh as loudly. His eyes drifted around the diner until they landed on Maria's booth. He noticed things other people didn't. He noticed how Maria tore sugar packets in half, saving one for later. He noticed how she slid most of the pancake toward the girls when the plate arrived. He noticed how she pretended to eat, lifting her fork now and then but only sipped water. He noticed how the twins watched her more than the food, their joy muted by worry no child should carry. When the waitress set the plate down, Maria thanked her too many times. She broke the pancake into careful, even pieces, counting bites in her head, without realizing she was doing it. The hot chocolate arrived last, steam curling upward like a promise. Maria pushed it toward the girls, insisting they drink first. Lily wrapped both hands around the mug, smiling, while Rose leaned in to share. Their faces relaxed just a little. Maria's gaze drifted to the small Christmas tree in the corner of the diner, its lights flickering softly. She thought of her husband, gone 2 years now after a workplace accident that took more than his life. It had taken stability, safety, and certainty with it. She thought of promises she couldn't keep and prayers that felt like they'd been swallowed by the cold night. She didn't notice the tall biker stand up. She didn't see him walk to the counter, exchange a few quiet words with the waitress, then turn toward her table. She only looked up when a shadow fell across her plate. Her heart skipped. Slowly, she raised her eyes. The man standing there didn't look angry. He didn't look amused. His expression was thoughtful, almost gentle, and it didn't quite match the tough leather vest and the inked arms beneath it. He nodded once, like he'd come to a decision and was at peace with it. Maria braced herself, unsure of what was coming. Her fingers tightened around her fork, her mind racing through apologies she hadn't yet spoken. She was ready to explain, to defend herself, to leave if she had to. The man cleared his throat softly, as if not wanting to scare them. "Mind if I sit for a second?" he asked. His voice was calm and steady. Maria hesitated, then nodded, unsure why she trusted him enough to do so. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down, resting his forearms on the table. Lily and Rose stared at him with wide eyes, curiosity beginning to outweigh fear. "Christmas Eve dinner," he said lightly, glancing at the share plate. "Best kind." Maria tried to explain, her words tumbling out thin and apologetic. She didn't mean to tell him so much, but something about the way he listened, really listened, made it impossible not to. When she finished, embarrassed by her honesty, he reached into his vest and pulled out his wallet. Her breath caught. "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. "We're fine." He raised a hand gently. "I know," he said. "This isn't charity." He stood and walked back to the counter, speaking quietly with the waitress. Minutes later, plates began appearing on the table. Real plates. Turkey, mashed potatoes, vegetables, warm rolls, another hot chocolate, then dessert. Maria stared, stunned. Tears spilled freely down her cheeks. "Why?" she whispered. The man sat back down, his eyes shining. "Because years ago," he said softly, "I was that kid, sitting with my mom, counting bites, hoping no one noticed." He glanced back at his table, where the other bikers watched in silence. "We look rough," he continued, "but we're family men, sons, daughters. Christmas is about remembering that." One by one, the other Hell's Angels stood and came over. They placed small wrapped gifts on the table, things they bought earlier for a charity ride. Toys, warm scarves, a stuffed bear. Lily gasped. Rose covered her mouth. Maria broke completely, sobbing as her daughters laughed and cried at the same time. The diner went quiet. Then someone clapped. Then another. Soon the whole room was applauding. Not for the bikers, not for the gifts, but for the moment itself. The tall man stood, placing a hand over his heart. "Merry Christmas," he said simply. When they left, the diner felt warmer somehow. Maria hugged her daughters tighter than ever, realizing hope hadn't abandoned her after all. It had just arrived wearing leather. The tall man's boots scraped softly against the tile as he pulled out the chair and sat across from Maria. Up close, she could see the lines etched into his face, not the harsh kind, but the kind carved by years of sun, wind, and experience. His beard was threaded with gray, and his eyes, though sharp, held a quiet warmth that made her chest ache in a way she couldn't explain. Lily and Rose stared at him openly now, curiosity slowly replacing fear. Children, Maria realized, were better judges of character than adults ever gave them credit for. They didn't see leather vests or patches. They saw tone, posture, intention. Christmas Eve dinner. The man said again, softer this time, glancing at the single plate between them. Looks familiar. Maria laughed weakly, the sound catching in her throat. It's enough, she said, though even she could hear the lie in her voice. We're grateful. He nodded, not challenging her, not pitying her, just acknowledging the truth beneath the words. Mind if I ask your names? Maria, she said, and these are my girls, Lily and Rose. He smiled at the twins. Nice to meet you, ladies. I'm Jack. Hi, Lily said shyly. Rose waved, clutching her hot chocolate mug with both hands like it might float away. Jack leaned back slightly, lowering his voice. My mom used to bring me places like this when things were tight. She'd tell me it was an adventure. Best nights of my childhood. He paused and added quietly, she was the bravest person I ever knew. Something inside Maria cracked open. Before she could stop herself, words spilled out about the overdue bills, the late notices, the empty space beside her in bed where her husband used to sleep. She told him how hard it was to be strong all the time, how tired she was of pretending she wasn't scared. Jack didn't interrupt. He didn't offer platitudes. He just listened. When she finished, embarrassed by how much she revealed to a stranger, he reached into his vest and pulled out his wallet. Maria's breath hitched instantly. No, she said, shaking her head. Please, we can manage. He raised his hand gently, stopping her without touching her. I know you can, he said. This isn't about that. Then he stood and walked toward the counter. Maria watched him go, her heart pounding. Lily tugged on her sleeve. Mommy, is everything okay? I think so, Maria whispered, though she wasn't sure. Jack spoke quietly with the waitress, his voice low enough that Maria couldn't hear the words. The waitress's tired expression shifted, first to surprise, then to something like awe. She nodded quickly and disappeared into the kitchen. A few minutes passed. Maria's nerves stretched thin. Then the first plate arrived. Turkey, sliced thick and steaming. Then mashed potatoes, rich with butter. Vegetables glistening with warmth. Soft rolls wrapped in a cloth napkin. Another hot chocolate. Then pie. Maria stared as if the table itself had betrayed reality. Her hands trembled as she covered her mouth. Jack, she whispered when he returned to his seat. You didn't have to. I wanted to, he said simply. Tears spilled freely now, no longer something she could fight. Why? She asked, her voice breaking. Jack glanced back at his table. The other bikers watched quietly, some with arms crossed, some with soft smiles. Because I remember what it felt like, he said, and because Christmas is about showing up for people when they need it most. One by one, the men stood and approached the booth. They placed small wrapped packages on the table. Things bought earlier for a charity ride. A doll, a toy truck, a pink scarf, a stuffed bear worn soft from being hugged once already. Lily gasped. Rose's hands flew to her mouth. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Maria broke. She sobbed openly, shoulders shaking as she pulled her daughters close. Lily laughed through tears. Rose hugged the bear like it was made of light. The diner fell silent. Someone near the counter began to clap. Another joined in. Soon the entire room was applauding. Not loudly, not wildly, but with a reverence that made the moment feel sacred. Strangers wiped their eyes. The waitress pressed a hand to her chest. Jack stood, placing a hand over his heart. Merry Christmas, he said. When the Hell's Angels left, the diner felt warmer, brighter, like something invisible had shifted in the air. Maria sat with her girls long after, sharing food without counting bites, laughing without guilt. For the first time in years, Hope didn't feel fragile. It felt real. And as she bundled her daughters into their coats and stepped back into the snow, Maria realized something she would carry forever. Hope hadn't abandoned her. It had simply arrived wearing leather.